Dune 2, another fully anticipated movie that came out just last week, ended up taking the box office by storm with loads and loads of people coming in to watch the film, and I feel fully satisfied with this conclusion to the first part. Now, granted, I had to watch the first part relatively close to the second part because I'd never seen the first movie, but now that I know what exactly goes on in the film, granted, because I've never read the books, so I have no idea what goes on in Dune. So the first movie, though felt kind of slow, brought me up to speed on what the world is all about. And I feel like Dune 2 has a pretty good conclusion, at least for what part 1 had to offer. And Dune 2 had many great things to talk about for it. Visually speaking, the way how the characters interacted with one another. Overall, this film had me on my seat pretty much the entire time. Granted, yes, the beginning was a bit slow because we had to get back up to speed with what happened because the first Dune came out years ago, and now we're finally having this conclusion much later. But I think it's a very satisfying one because compared to the way how Dune 1 ended, Dune 2, though, ends on a cliffhanger, still leaves me waiting for the third part, if a third part is going to come, which I think there is some confirmation that there is a script being written as of right now for part 3, which makes sense because it is a multiple book series, and I think it is going to be a great venture to go down, because if the first Dune set up the entire world and Dune 2 took all that setup and turned it into the movie that it is that we saw today, I could only imagine what all the other parts are going to be like. So before we dive in, two things. One, if you've gotten this far, like the video and subscribe to the channel. It does help out quite a lot. And number two, spoiler warning, because I am going to dive into some stuff. I may slip here and there talking about some things about Dune 2, but I think it needs to be mentioned because there are so many key things that happen in this film that just makes it worth watching for the entirety of its runtime. This is a long film, and there's a lot of things that happen, and fortunately, this is one of those few films that nears the 3-hour mark, but yet you're there watching the entire thing. Your eyes do not deviate from the screen. I really want to focus a lot on the visualizations of the worlds because it really shows how the people groups within each of these planets ties into their culture. And by painting this visualization on the people groups, we see how they interact with one another, from the Fremens on Arrakis and their need to survive and save as much water, but yet also treat water in a religious sense by ritualizing those who have passed by taking their water and giving it into this internal river that contains the water of many of the other fallen Fremen during their time, to the people of Gedi Prime, the Harkonnens, where inside we get to see the colorizations within their buildings, but outside, the way how the planet is within its own solar system causes a cascade of black and white, which ties into the way how they do their politics and how they treat one another. Very two-sided perspectives. It's either this or that, and you really see that amongst all the Harkonnens, where it's either one way or another way. There's no gray area, which of course is depicted in the sense of black and white. And the minor details that comes of it, from the sandy waves of the Arrakis, and you can now start seeing the blue eyes coming up on Paul Atreides, and how he as a character is starting to grow through the ingestion of the spice, and him evolving as a character and becoming one with the Fremen by starting to ride the sandworms and doing all the training and growing with the people, to the Harkonnens, where we're able to see their radicalized way of life, gladiatorial battles for Fade's birthday, the nephew of the Baron of all the Harkonnens, and the interesting aspects of the way how their world works and how different it looks compared to how our world works, with fireworks firing off into the air like ink blots, and how everybody just welcomely goes into a world where they only see two colors. And aside from the visualization, which overall was fantastic, honestly, my eyes were so glued to the screen you couldn't even turn my head without me focusing on the movie. But the writing also draws you in too. A problem that we had with the Avatar series was that the visualization was pretty good, but the writing pulled you out of it. The writing in this case, which was executed by really great actors with the chemistry that they had amongst one another, draws you in even further, because now you actually have sort of a feeling and a relationship that you're establishing with these characters. You want Paul to succeed, but at the same time you understand the mistrust in Chani, and how Paul is starting to understand that his rise to power is becoming very detrimental, and he doesn't want to go down this path because he wants to see the people of Arrakis to live and be free. But there's a chance that Paul is going to end up being tyrannical, and he doesn't want to go down this path, but ends up having to go down this path. So now you're wrestling within yourself as an audience member to see, like, okay, like, he needs to make a decision. He knows what's wrong. What is he going to do? And the same goes for Chani, because Chani now has a distrust in Paul. She has always had a distrust in Paul, but now it's transitioned because now she's warming up to him as a person and understands that he's trying to essentially be Fremen, but now her trust has changed from not trusting him at all to not trusting if he's going to be able to free the people of Arrakis from the Imperium. You can really see how these actors play their characters, with how well written these scripts are, how they communicate amongst one another and express their feelings and have subtlety and leave a lot to the perspective of the audience to try and understand what's going on, rather than just blatantly giving you the answer. And I mentioned earlier the chemistry of the actors, especially between Zendaya and Timothy, how when you see them looking at each other, you almost feel the tension between them, especially in moments where Chani, as Zendaya's character, ends up breaking her stoicism and her distrust by looking into Paul's eyes and giving unto him, especially in moments where Paul is vulnerable and she understands that he's trying to do his best to be with the Fremen. You see the chemistry amongst them, and in no moment is it awkward, except for maybe one, which I'll get into later. But at the end of the day, the actors executed their roles perfectly, and knowing how they're supposed to do their roles on top of a well-written script just makes it such a great film to watch, that even in the moments where you can kind of nitpick that weren't favorable to your liking, this film was just absolutely fantastic, from the visuals to the characters to the writing. Great film overall. And now I mentioned the nitpicks here and there, and it really ranges from like, bro, why are you even like bringing this up, to I can probably kind of see why you would not like that. And there's really just a handful of things over the course of a 3-hour freaking film. And the main thing that I think a lot of people have talked about, which I've brought up to my girlfriend, is why Christopher Walken as the Emperor. I mean, when you look at him, I think of a no-nonsense kind of person, not really an old, decrepit leader of a dying empire trying to maintain his power. But I guess it doesn't matter in this case because you don't really see him that much and he doesn't really talk all that often. But I mean, just visually seeing the type of person that he is and the association kind of pulled me away a bit. It was almost comical in a way, but it didn't take away from the film, mainly because you don't see him that often. In fact, he probably gets maybe less than 5 minutes of screen time, but overall, it was definitely a weird pick, in my opinion. Another nitpick that I found weird that other people have mentioned, but I kind of agree with, is how did the Harkonnens know where all the Sietches were? Where in the first film, they pretty much blatantly said only like 50,000 or so Fremen exist on this planet, and they have no idea where the heck they live. And then instantly they know exactly where they live. I feel like that bit is a bit unexplained, but at the same time, I feel like there's a lot of things that are kind of unexplained, because one other thing is Paul's training montage, which seems very cut, because he basically has to go on a camping trip and then almost immediately is riding a sandworm, so we miss a lot of him trying to become a Fremen. But on top of that, it's just another piece of, yeah, it's kind of an interesting point to bring up, but it doesn't take away from the film. And then my last point is the scene where Chani sees Paul laying down and essentially dying from the poison, and comes into the room and does the very tropey, who's responsible for this? How can we, can we get him up? Please, someone, is there anywhere to help? I don't like when films do that, and I kind of understand why this is done, because obviously Chani cares for Paul, but I feel like every single time somebody does a scene like that in any film, it's never really executed appropriately. At least to me. I've never enjoyed scenes like that, because it just pulls you away, because no one's there to help. No one is going to be able to do anything. There's a reason why he's laying there and no one's touching him. So why are you going in and screaming amongst one another for a solution? I get it. You care about the person and you want to see if there is actually anybody there who may come up with something, but it kind of pulls me away. Other than those few nitpicks that I brought up, it doesn't detract from the film at all. Yeah, it takes away maybe some points here and there, but I still think that Dune 2 is significantly better than Dune 1. A solid 8.5, probably even a 9 out of 10 film, worth watching. If you got this far and you went past all the spoilers, just go right ahead, because there's still a lot of crap that I did not mention, because it's a 3-hour film. I would be here all day talking if I had to explain every little detail about what goes on. But of course, I think it's worth the watch. Like I said, 9 out of 10 film. It sets up for another movie, because obviously there's way more books. It's not just going to end there. Worth taking your time, worth the money. I recommend it highly. Again, if you liked the video, give it a like. Comment down below, did you watch Dune 2 and what did you like about it? Or maybe what did you not like about it? Subscribe to the channel if you want more stuff like this. I'll catch everybody later. Peace.